Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar entitled Philippine Equity Strategy Running Its Course. I'm Joy Lamanlan from BPI Securities Client Acquisition Team, and I'll be your host for today's session. Before we begin, just a few quick reminders. Please keep your microphones on mute throughout the session. Feel free to send your questions via the Zoom Q&A chat box. We'll address them later during the Q&A segment. And please note that this webinar will be recorded. In today's session, our research analysts will walk us through three key areas. First, we'll talk about the big market themes, what's shaping the Philippine equities landscape right now, and what to watch out for. Next, we'll dive into economic indicators so we can see how factors such as GDP growth, inflation, and interest rates impact market performance. And finally, we'll share actionable strategies, practical tips you can use to position your portfolio for 2026. With that, let's get started. We're joined today by Rachel Cruz, a seasoned senior research analyst and CFA with expertise in financial analysis, valuation, and sector research across banking, conglomerates, and real estate. She has a strong track record in leading analyst teams and delivering investor presentations at top Philippine financial institutions. Alongside her is Greg Ilag, senior research analyst with over 15 years of experience covering Philippine equities. Greg specializes in telecom, utilities, property, and conglomerates, and is well regarded for providing actionable insights to local and foreign institutional investors. Rachel and Greg, the floor is yours.
Nice afternoon, everyone. The title of our 2026 market strategy is Running Its Course. We published the full report last November 26, 2025, which is available on the BPI Trade platform. For this afternoon, we will be presenting the key points of our strategy report. By definition, the phrase running its course means something begins, continues for a time, and then ends. Indeed, the current corruption probe may end with either a temporary resolution or a lasting reform. Nonetheless, as we all know, the market looks forward, and our view, as always, is that there are opportunities for investors. We will start off with a quick roundup of our macro view, then proceed to our market strategy going into this year. In a nutshell, we expect GDP to rebound modestly, primarily driven by consumption spending. Our PSCI target of 6,900 is anchored on the said economic rebound coupled with stable corporate earnings growth. However, we continue to be selective in this market as growth outlook remains fragile. Our focus remains on companies with strong cash generation profiles and attractive valuations. In terms of risks, corruption and the peso depreciation will likely continue to be at the top of investor concerns. First, on GDP growth, it is worth noting that the significant slowdown of public spending during the third quarter of 2025 spilled over to both investments and consumption. We expect GDP growth of 4.8% for 2025 as a result, before rebounding to 5.5% this year. Majority of the improvement will be from consumption spending, while modest gains are also expected for government and investment spending. On the fiscal side, we expect a rebound in public spending towards the second half of this year. As an example, it took about 5 quarters for public spending to materially recover during the PDAF issue. We think this might be the case also this time around, especially with the recently signed budget of 6.79 trillion pesos, which is higher by 7% year-on-year. Primary spending is up 7% year-on-year, but we also note that the debt service is set to grow at a faster pace of 11%. This means that the fiscal space continues to tighten and addressing wasteful spending also becomes more important. With this, we expect the BSP to continue easing policy rates in order to support economic recovery. The BPI economics team forecasts 25 bips rate cut this year in February and April, bringing the policy rate to 4% by year end. There's still policy space for easing as inflation remains within the BSP's 2 to 4% target range. Inflation, however, may reach the upper end of the BSP target as favorable base effects from low rise in oil prices also start to wane. This is the reason why we are seeing also the weakness in the peso, as the BSP is expected to front load rate cuts and with no expected rate cut also from the US Fed this January. We continue to see the policy rate gap narrowing. This slide shows you a summary of what we have discussed so far. GDP is set to recover mainly driven by consumption amid slower inflation and declining borrowing costs. However, the peso will likely continue bearing the brunt of the wider fiscal deficit as well as the narrow gap between the US Fed and BSP policy rates. Now, going to the market, this slide shows you a one-year chart for the PSEI. A lot of things happened last year. During the first half, mostly we saw external events such as the US reciprocal tariffs and conflicts between Israel and Iran driving the market lower. However, during the second half, local events took the front seat following the SONA in July, which led to the unraveling of the flood control controversy. Following a spending curve on infrastructure, the PSEI hit a low of close to 5,500, but has since recovered by nearly 15%, which we attribute to bargain hunting activities as the PSEI also hit crisis low multiples of 8 times PE at one point. Expectations for better GDP growth this year also underpin the more optimistic sentiment. From an earnings perspective, we expect the PSEI's EPS growth to be steady at 9%. So this is also the same level as what we are expecting for 2025. The sectors that will continue to lead are the transport and power and utilities sector, while the consumer sector is expected to rebound from last year, mostly due to normalizing prices of key input costs. The other sectors are set to grow slightly above GDP, but not really as spectacular. Thus, we view that a selective buying strategy is still apt at this point. Overall, our base case target for the PSEI is 6,900, driven by a 9% corporate earnings growth and a 10 times PE multiple, which is well below the 10-year average of 15 times. We expect NEP rating to be capped as GDP remains below the historical average of 6%, and with the 10-year bond yield also sticky at 6%. The bear case of 5,900 is a derating to 9 times if government spending continues to slow, affecting both business and consumer confidence. Meanwhile, our bull case scenario is a rating to 11 times, which we expect to happen if public spending reforms materialize and push GDP growth at a faster than expected rate. With this, I will now pass the floor to Greg for our sector view and stock picks.
Thanks, Rach. So moving on to our sector outlook, we are overweight on five key sectors. So I guess we start off with the transport sector. So for this sector, we see a strong volume growth and rising PE yields that will drive stronger earnings growth for ICT. Sorry, can we go back to the summary slide? And then for the consumer sector, we're also overweight on this sector, given that easing input costs along with strong consumer spending will likely drive stronger profit growth. So the outliers for these sectors are basically CNPF, Pure Gold, and JFC. For power and utilities, we also like this sector, given that the higher output coming from new capacity is mainly contracted. Therefore, we see stronger profit growth and returns for AP and Meralco. For REITs, we continue to see high occupancy, which limits the downside risk to dividends. And for this sector, we like RCR. Lastly, for the mining sector, we continue to be bullish on these stocks as the higher metal prices will likely turn to stronger profits, particularly for Apex and Felix. We are market weight on some sectors like banks and property, given that we see limited gains following the lower policy rates as well as the risk to the office sector. For telecoms, we continue to see that the Konektadong Pinoy app might limit sentiment for this sector, but we do like Converge as the sole exposure to this sector. Lastly, we're underweight some other sectors as well, like conglomerates. We think it is preferably better to buy the direct exposure to the sectors like banks and property. Nonetheless, for the conglomerates, we like AC, which has rallied strong to start the year. We also try to avoid gaming, given that the tighter regulations and weak VIP market will weigh on the earnings of these companies. Next slide, please. So to start, for the transport sector, we continue to see strong profit growth driven by newly acquired ports, as well as improving trade flows in Asia and EMEA ports. We see a double-digit volume growth for ICT this year, driven by the new capacity coming online for the company. For the consumer sector, on the other hand, we see better margins complementing the strong consumer spending, as the lower input costs will likely translate to better margins for the companies in this sector. Next slide, please. For power and utilities, we continue to see that the strong supply additions will surpass the demand growth over the next 3 years, and that will likely drive spot prices lower. So we think companies will opt to contract more capacity, and therefore this will allow them to mitigate the impact of those lower spot prices. So for this sector, we like AP and Meralco, as I've said. Most of their capacity is already contracted, and the impact of lower spot prices will hardly be felt for these companies. On the mining side, we think higher gold, silver, and copper prices will translate to stronger earnings for these three companies, particularly for Felix and Apex. Next slide, please. For property and REITs, we continue to be selective on this space given the emerging risk for both residential and office segments. For the property space, we like Ali mainly, and then for the REITs, we continue to like RCR, given that the high occupancy will likely limit the downside risk to dividends. And then moving on to the next sectors, for banks and telecoms, we think the share price recovery for these segments will remain limited. However, for banks, we think the ROEs will remain high as the companies have been increasing their loan portfolio on the consumer loans, and those sectors give the banks higher net interest margins, which allows them to keep ROE near 13%. On the telecom side, fiber remains the only bright spot segment, growing at around 6% per year. So this segment remains underpenetrated in the Philippines. And we continue to see telecoms pulling out the prepaid fiber services for their new clients. So this allows them to grow faster compared to the mobile segment. Then moving on to the last two sectors for conglomerates, we have seen some rally for conglomerates following the sell-off last year. So you can see that last year, both AC and SM were sold off by 20%. And I think AC this year has already rallied by around 15%. Nonetheless, we continue to see upside for that stock, given that it trades at around 30% discount to NAV, which is narrower than where we see it properly. However, we do think that investors should avoid gaming, given that the GGR growth will likely remain capped in the near term, given the weakness in the sector. Okay, so moving on to our stock picks. So we like ICT, Meralco, AP, JFC, RCR, CMPF, and Pure Gold. So I think ICT has done well since we published the strategy report last year. So just to recap, we like ICT because it has the index-leading ROE and EPS growth among our stock picks. For the power side, we like Meralco and AP. Most of their capacity is contracted, and they have double-digit returns leading the sector. For the consumer side, we like the outliers, JFC, CNPF, and Pure Gold. So these three stocks have strong earnings growth and ROE, as well as positive free cash flow, particularly for Pure Gold. Then lastly, for the dividend play, we like RCR. the yield is 6%, and I think downside risk is pretty limited given the infusions that the company has on the pipeline. So next slide, please. So just to summarize, we continue to see modest GDP recovery for the Philippines, but nonetheless, valuations remain cheap in the market, and then you can outperform the market if you focus on the defensive business models and high yield plays that we highlight in our strategy report, as seen in the BPI trade platform. So this is the sample report that we have uploaded last February 2026, wherein we think investors would have outperformed if they able to follow the report last November. So the last slide is our valuation table, and I think I can give it back to Joy for the Q&A.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Rich. So now we'll move to the Q&A session to address some of the questions already sent by our audience. So if you haven't submitted your questions yet, please feel free to type these into the Q&A chat box, and we'll do our best to cover as many as we can. And joining us for this segment are additional members of BPI Securities research team. Paul Padit, who specializes in property and consumer sectors, and Dan Brian Go, covering consumer and gaming. Let's get started with your questions. I guess we'll take this one. Why is the stock market performing so well in the past weeks? And do you expect this to be sustained? I think this one goes to Rach.
Yeah, thanks, Joy. In terms of the market, apart from the BSP cutting interest rates back in December, nothing much has really changed at the macro level. We think that the recent rally is thus due to bargain hunting activity. I think at one point, more than 50% of our nearly 40 companies that we cover were trading at sub 10 times PE and is also offering above 4% dividend yield. So insofar as the sustainability of the current market rally, a lot of it will be dependent on the growth outlook that we are expecting and if it's something that will really pan out. At the close of the PSCI today, the upside to our index target is just about 6%. So there's still space for the rally to continue. But as we said earlier, for this year at least, we continue to remain selective in terms of our stock picks.
Thank you, Rach. And I think as a follow-up, what market moving events should investors watch out for in the next 2 to 3 months?
Yes, in terms of market moving events, we do have the fourth quarter GDP coming out this month and the BPI economics team is forecasting a growth of 4.7%, which is a sequential improvement from the 4% we saw in the third quarter. We also have several liquidity events. We have the MSCI and FTSE rebalancing this first quarter, as well as the PSCI rebalancing expected to be announced sometime end of month. Our internal estimates continue to show that RCR will be included while AGI will be deleted. Then lastly, we also have the fourth quarter 2025 earnings season. Starting off with the banks will be reporting this February. So overall, busy months of data. So this will really dictate whether the rally that we are seeing has legs to continue.
Appreciate that, Rich. We have a question coming from one of our attendees. So let me take this. Anyone can answer. Out of the 14 stock picks, given limited budget, what is your top 3 picks with conviction? To reiterate, with conviction.
Okay. I guess with conviction, Probably we'll focus on our Mag 7, what we call internally the BPI Securities Mag 7. So in terms of upside, I think the biggest upside is with Jollibee. Maybe Paul can add color on the recent announcement about the US spin-off. But outside of that transaction or potential transaction, we do think that the recovery in terms of earnings growth will come through this year as a result of declining prices of key input costs. So we have Jollibee. Then second, of course, for REITs, we like RCR. As mentioned earlier, there are possible liquidity events during this first quarter that would continue to support the price of RCR, as well as the dividend yield at this point, from our perspective, remains attractive. Then lastly, probably more a cyclical peak. Is it cyclical or growth peak? Is sorry, it's a defensive and growth stock, which is Meralco. So Meralco has transformed itself not just as a distribution company. Um, it's also very much involved already in the generation side, and we are seeing the Gencos continue to outperform relative to the distribution segment. So I guess maybe also Greg can share about Maynilad. I think we were not able to add Maynilad to our stock picks because we just initiated on the stock back in December. So maybe Jollibee, Paul, then maybe Greg can add some color on Maynilad and why we like the stock.
Yes, Paul.
Okay, once again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar. So, first off, on Jollibee, I think, like what Rach mentioned, we continue to remain bullish or optimistic on Jollibee. While same-store sales growth for this year range at mid-single digit, we think there would be further legs to grow the Jollibee's same-store sales growth by around 6 to 7% for 2026 and 2027. It will be anchored mainly by a robust and solid rebound for the domestic segment, driven mostly by rising mall footfall and a rebound in the household consumption spending, owing mostly to cooling inflation. Meanwhile, we are also encouraged by the turnaround that we've seen in the international segment, especially on the China brands, as well as the resilience of the American Asian brands. But nevertheless, the earnings rebound that we expect this year at, I guess, around low teens from flattish growth by end of 2025 will be mostly margin recovery. Margin recovery from more favorable coffee and chicken feeds costs, which were elevated last year. And I guess Rach also mentioned about the recent spin-off of Jollibee International. They plan to list Jollibee International from on United States stock market, leaving the JFC here being purely domestic business. I think that according to the disclosure, the transaction will be placed or will be completed by around late 2027. So there's a lot that could still happen between these 2 years. However, from our view, we think that the transaction makes sense. It is a strategic move for Jollibee as a whole to provide EPS and valuation clarity between their cash generative local business with stable earnings and revenues and their growth driven international segment, which is which remains which currently seen drag on both financing costs from their debts to finance their recent acquisitions and also further brand reinvestments. So we think this will provide EPS and valuation clarity. And I guess I'll now pass it to Greg for his color on Maynilad.
Thanks, Paul. So for Maynilad, so we like the stock basically because of three things. First, the company is the largest concession holder among water concessions in Southeast Asia. So in terms of population count and active concessions, Maynilad is the biggest concession in those terms, and they operate the most attractive concession, I think, in Southeast Asia. If you look at the terms of the concession and you compare it to other countries, water concessions here in the Philippines, we have guaranteed returns, we have inflation adjustments, and we have a periodic review every 5 years and guaranteed returns on top of that. So those are normally things you don't see in other countries. Number two, we like Maynilad because of its high opening cash position. So the opening cash position in simple terms is the net amount invested into the concession. So Maynilad is entitled to a 12% guaranteed return on that opening cash position, and that's 4 times bigger than MWC, which we think signifies stronger cash inflows for Maynilad over the medium term. And then lastly, we also like the stock because of the yield. So the yield is around 6%, I think, because of the current stock price rally since the IPO. But if you look at it, if you rank it in the PSE, I think that ranks among the top 10 in terms of yield. So still a good stock to own in my view. And I think there's upside considering the cash flow growth in the medium term. We also like Meralco because of the growing power generation and the stability of the distribution business. I think any sell-off related to the Solar Philippines news is a chance to buy the stock, given that it fundamentally does not affect Meralco in my view. So I think that's mostly it for my end. I pass it back to Joy. I think there are other questions.
Yes. Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Paul. Next one, we'll take one of the questions sent in by one of our clients. So this goes, and I think this is for Brian. You named a number of sectors that BPI trade is overweight. While this seems counterintuitive, may I know what sectors do you think will underperform this year and the reasons for it?
Hi, Joy, and thank you for our valued client for asking that question. So, um, one sector that we mentioned, which we suspect to underperform, is the gaming segment. So, the reason why we think it'll underperform, I'll just take you back for a quick recap. I think it was August last year that the Senate Committee on Games and Amusement opened their floor and they criticized the explosive growth of the gaming industry in the Philippines. So right after the proceedings of the Senate, we saw a direct effect on the industry. I believe the whole industry in terms of gross gaming revenue fell by about what was it? It was almost 15%. And then e-gaming in particular fell by almost 30%. So if that's just on a sequential basis, I can imagine that this year gaming operators will feel the full effect of the tighter regulations. So the main the two main restrictions right now, which are crippling the industry, is the delinking of e-gaming platforms from e-wallets, as well as advertising restrictions. So aside from that, I think today we've received news that there's going to be a visa-free program for Chinese tourists. So we'll see how that will try to attract the VIP segment for licensed casinos. But I think it's very temporary as of now. So we'll see how it will play out. But as of now, the VIP segment also weighs in on the gaming industry. So yeah.
Thank you. But just to ask also, Brian, any dark horse stocks not mentioned in the report? And how about spirits or liquor issues and industrials?
Yes. Thanks, Joy. So if you look at our recent coverage, I think it's grown by quite a lot. We cover almost 40 names now. And we're starting to cover a lot of mid-cap stocks. So I encourage our customers to look at our research reports in our app and yeah, to keep up to date. So one of the recent names that we cover is Keeper. So for those who are not familiar, Keeper is the liquor distribution arm of the of Lushoco and Costco Capital. So they basically have 70% market share in the imported liquor industry in the Philippines. So it's a name that we've been paying attention to, and we think that there's still room for a lot of upside given that there are some catalysts down the line. One of it is the infusion of Booze Online, which is one of the largest beer importers of the Philippines. And another one is their I think I think they've recently acquired the Sula brands, which I believe they'll try to scale and try to make it into an export product in the future. So yeah.
Thank you for your insights, Brian. So I'm sure you've answered that particular question. Moving on, this is an interesting one. So from an anonymous attendee, if corruption issues fades away, what would be the first sector to see growth? Anyone can take this.
Yeah, I can think of two sectors. First is on the banking sector. As we know, the loan growth is very dependent on where the macro economy is going. So I think the latest figures from the BSP is that loan growth for November is at 10.3%. So relative to the past or historical figures, usually when the policy rates are closer to 4%, you can see that loan growth is trending closer to the 15 to 20% range. So why is loan growth close to 10% right now? It's mainly because demand issue. As we know, corporate loan demand has been weakening, particularly maybe on the real estate space, which continues to grapple with oversupply both on the residential and office market. Then we are also seeing slowdown, particularly in the manufacturing sector. So mostly, if we continue to see the corruption probe translating to reforms, not just on the budget itself, but also in restoring confidence of both businesses and consumer to spend, then we could expect that loan growth will materially pick up, thereby benefiting banks. So aside from banks, as what I mentioned, we also look at the property sector as a barometer also of consumer spending confidence. So yeah, I guess from that end, we would look at mainly two sectors, so banks and property.
So there you go, banks and property. Thank you, Rich. Next one, I think this is for Greg. Any update on ASEN?
Thanks, Joy. So for ASEN, there's actually quite a few positive developments that we see this year for the company. So first, there's I think around one gigawatts of new capacity coming online for the company, and then they've also recovered some lost capacity from last year, which were hit by some storms, I think. So they were able to repair some of that capacity, and they're able to increase contracting of their Philippine capacity. So these developments, I think, will improve their profits this year compared to last year. And I think that's driving the strong share performance that we saw in December and in early January. So overall, I think there's still a bit of an upside for ASEN in our view.
Thanks, Greg. Moving to the next question, with related to recent events, with what's happening in Venezuela and Iran, how will this affect the logistics and transportation industry? So this one, I think, is for Brian.
Yes. Okay. Um, so I'll take that question one by one. So I think the commonality between these two things are basically the key commodity of oil. So after these two events, I think a lot of eyes are on oil. And since it's such a key commodity for the transportation and logistics sector, I think a lot of organizations internationally thought that oil would be more volatile as a response to this. But surprisingly, we haven't seen that as of yet. But we've seen a slight uptick. I think year to date, some of some oil prices are up about 7%. But if you compare it on a year-on-year basis, it's actually still down by about 18 to 19%. And aside from this, I think eight key OPEC members still promise to fulfill their commitments, meaning that production will not really change too much. So I think oil is still gonna be relatively benign this year or favorable for logistics companies, meaning that they will enjoy lower prices. So aside from this, in terms of trade, we're also seeing some trade flows flow into the East and the emerging economies. So we think that ICT is also poised to benefit from this because they have a large presence and ports in these key areas. So it's actually a sort of a plus for the Philippines and for some of the stocks that we actually cover.
Okay, thanks for your insights, Brian. Now moving on, I think this one is addressed to Paul. So on properties or REITs, um, what is your outlook on the mall segment? What are the key drivers for revenue growth?
Thanks, Joy. I guess we have a positive or a very positive outlook on mall segments. So first off, our outlook is that they will continue to sustain higher footfall or foot traffic driven by rising RTO trends and sustained experiential spending. So this will drive at around 9% to 10% mall revenue growth for our covered companies. Because of higher foot traffic, we expect stronger tenant sales, which in turn supports healthier or stronger tenant take up and occupancy. So more mall traffic will lead to higher tenant sales, will lead to retailers that are incentivized to lease mall spaces. So key demand drivers or key tenant drivers that we are watching are first F&B chains such as restaurants and coffee shops, which typically command higher rental rates per square meters, and also the uptick in foreign non-food retailers because they are encouraged with the increase in experiential spending. So this will support tenant mix diversification for our mall developers. For developers, meanwhile, we think it will further encourage these developers to redevelop or modernize their existing mall GLA to attract new tenants, while also at the same time um, prepare or create or construct new mall openings in emerging provinces outside of NCR. So the likes of Calabarzon, Central Luzon, the Negros region, and Central Visayas.
Thanks, Paul. But still related to that sector, why do you prefer Ali over SMPH?
Okay, thank you for that question. So I think looking at our forecasts, we are seeing faster earnings growth for Ayala Land at around 10 to 12% annually between 2025 and 2028. So this is faster compared to SM Prime, I think at around 6 to 7% annually for that same time period. Why is that? First, I want to tackle SM Prime. While the mall revenues of SM Prime will remain strong at around 10% annually, the drag will come from the residential revenue, which saw lag in terms of take up post-COVID. So these are your core developments for SMDC. And at the same time, we are also seeing elevated interest expense from SM Prime's debt or bond issuances. Meanwhile, if we compared it to Ayala Land, we are seeing growth in residential revenue driven mostly by the recognition of residential pre-sales that Ayala Land had post-COVID, particularly on the premium segment. Aside from that, there are also the completion of mall and hotel renovations and further lot sales that will support appreciation of Ayala Land's EPS. Aside from and additionally, lastly, we also like Ayala Land's expansive 11,000 hectare of land bank, which will be useful for the management for future horizontal developments. Therefore, banking on the rising demand in house and lots outside of NCR.
Thank you, Paul, and I hope our audience will take note of this. For the next question, from an anonymous attendee, the question goes like this. So, if I'm trying to estimate the cost of borrowing for corporate versus retail or individual borrowers, if terminal interest rate is at 4%, how much will be the cost of borrowing for corporates versus retail borrowers?
Yeah. Thanks. I'll take that question. So basically, for corporates, it moves together with BSP policy rates because usually corporate loans are tied to the short-term tenors of the yield curve. So for example, if we expect a 50 bips decline for the policy rate to 4%, then maybe put 100 to 150 bips risk premium since this is corporate loans is not a risk-free instrument, then basically you can see the rate at about 500 to 5% to 5.5%. So that's the way you usually banks price corporate loans. Now for retail loans, this is typically tied to the longer tenor of the yield curve. So if you look at where the 10-year bond yields, even the 20-year yields, it has not really moved lower. And usually it's because of two things. First, long-term inflation expectations. And second is, of course, any risk on potential credit downgrades in the future. And now that we have these issues regarding corruption, and that has resulted to increased risk premium, especially for the longer tenor of the yield curve. So basically, what I'm saying is, for retail loans, the transmission of the policy rates is slower. So depending on the product, usually for mortgage as well as auto loans, that's close to about 8 to 9%. However, for credit cards, of course, it's typically higher. The loan yield is maybe closer to 15% level because you have to take into account that credit card as well as salary loans is not doesn't have a collateral as compared to auto and property mortgage loans. So basically, corporate loans will move together with the policy rates, but retail loans will reprice lower as a result of them being more risky.
Thank you, Rich. Another one from our audience about the GCash IPO. I'm sure everyone is excited to hear about this. So this question goes, I think Greg will be best suited to answer this. So what is your view on buying Globe in anticipation of a possible GCash IPO?
Okay, so thanks for that. So in my view, a GCash IPO would be positive for Globe's valuations because an IPO would unlock the value of GCash. So I think that could be positive for Globe. So we do have a buy rating on Globe. We think there's improving free cash flow for the firm. So that comes from the stable service revenues both in mobile and corporate data segments, complemented by declining capex intensity of the telecom business that they have. So I think the current yield is around 6%, and that's sustainable given the growing free cash flows for Globe. So again, we have a buy rating, and I think that GCash IPO could be positive for the stock.
Thanks, Greg. The next question is related to JFC. So the question is, how do you look at JFC and its plan to spin off its international operations? Is this a buy signal now for investors?
Thanks for that again, John. So we understand that Jollibee, like what I mentioned earlier, plans to list its US, its international unit or international business to the US stock exchange. I think it might be listing on the Nasdaq, while leaving the Philippine business in its JFC ticker that is currently listed on the PSE that is currently listed on PSE. And we think that the spin-off actually makes sense. This will allow the group to isolate its cash generative, higher margin domestic business from the international segment and provide EPS and valuation clarity. I want to note that JFC International posted a negative net income in the first 9 months of 2025, while its EBIT margin is at 4%, lagging behind the domestic margins of around 9%. So this reflects heavier brand reinvestments, while on the NIAT side, it reflects higher financing cost because of Jollibee's recent acquisitions of international brands like Compose Coffee. So post-transaction, we expect that JFC here in the Philippines, free cash flow will improve on a leaner debt position, which will support JFC's transition to a potential dividend yield and defensive consumer play, given the clarity in the valuations.
Okay, I hope that answers the question of our client. Now, moving to the power and utility sector. The question is, what are the key catalysts for the power sector in 2026 as demand growth normalizes and more renewable capacity comes in?
So there's a few catalysts that we're looking on the horizon. First would be the results of the Meralco CSP. I think stocks to win, the CSP will likely do well because that allows them to price in their capacity at higher rates versus spot. And second is the implementation of the natural gas law. I understand that the government might set quotas for natural gas contracting, and we will have to see how this impacts the utilities because there's also the RPS or renewable portfolio standards that mandates distribution utilities to contract renewable capacity. So we will have to see which of these will the DOE prioritize, and that will likely affect stock performance as well. So overall, there's quite a few events that we look at. So we recommend sticking to the companies with high contracted capacity, like AP and Meralco.
I see. Thanks, Greg. Now moving on to one of our questions given by one of our anonymous attendee. So, okay, so how about SMPH? Am I right that they have a new development in Susana Heights and with that they reclaim the land in the MOA area? So, Paul.
Yes. With SM Prime, I think they currently plan to launch their premium upscale horizontal development in Susana Heights. This will be their SM Signature Series. I think they plan to launch it by around the tail end of 2026 or 2020 or the beginning of 2027. And this attests to the growing demand of horizontal developments outside of NCR, given that there have been an increase not only in land value but also of the yields of house and lots outside of the capital region because of the rising infrastructure projects and growing connectivity among cities. So aside from this development will cater to the premium segment or the upscale segment. Meanwhile, on the reclamation on the MOA area, from my understanding, they plan to begin pre-selling these slots by next year. But in 2026, the land tilting should be completed by the tail end of 2026. So for SM Prime, we currently have a price target of 32 pesos. We think that the investors are still overlooking SM Prime's dominant mall segment, which accounts for around 60% of their sales during the first 9 months of 2025, as the stock currently trades at a heavy discount to its multiple or to its NAV.
Thank you, Paul, for your insights. In the interest of time, I think we just have time for 1 to 2 more questions. So the next one is for Greg. So what is the impact of the KPA or the Konektadong Pinoy Act to the telecom sector? Who is your preferred exposure in the telecom space?
So I think the KPA will likely encourage competition by 2027 because it allows companies to enter the industry without really a congressional franchise. So once we get more clarity on the pricing for the infrastructure sharing as well as the spectrum costs, that's when we'll see, I think, new participants in the market. So we think incumbents will be able to defend themselves given their size. And we do expect them to weather the new competition moving forward. So for the preferred exposure, I think Converge is still the best thing to own in the sector. So the company is able to grow the prepaid fiber segment quite aggressively, given that they have more than 5 million ports available for most of the subscribers. So that would allow them to outpace both Globe and PLDT in terms of growth. And I think that's the best stock to own for the sector moving forward.
Thanks, Greg. So I think we'll have time to answer just one more question. And for those unanswered questions, we'll try to take these offline. So this one goes, any final advice for investors on how to position in this market?
Well, first, thank you to our valued clients for joining us this afternoon. We hope you picked up something, but if there's one key takeaway from this session, the market is in constant flux, so it helps to be nimble and stay on top of things. Apart from our sector and stock picks, which are companies with strong business models and superior cash generation profiles, we hope you continue to remain updated through reading our research materials available on the BPI Trade platform for additional insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you to our research team. On behalf of BPI Securities, thank you for joining and engaging in today's discussion. If you have further questions or want to learn how BPI Trade can support your investing journey, feel free to reach out to us. That's all today. That's all for today, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. Have a great day ahead.